Hi, grade fives. So today we're going to be talking about the First Nations groups from the early 16 and 1700s and how they would have related to the British and French who came from Europe and began to create settlements in Atlantic Canada. So just as a brief kind of overview of what we would have learned last week, we saw that the British and the French left Europe for several reasons and came to Atlantic Canada. The first one of these reasons is that they hoped that they could find more fishing and farming opportunities. As we know, a lot of the people who left lived in big cities where the opportunities for fishing and farming weren't very plentiful, and also there was a lot of overcrowding and a lot of people in one area. Another reason why they came to Atlantic Canada was because they were using the resources from part of these areas and sending those resources back to Europe in some cases, and in some cases also keeping it for themselves. Even though they did find a lot of success with fishing, there were several challenges, especially with farming, especially in Newfoundland, where we found out that the soil quality was poor, and also they didn't have other neighbors that they could rely on in order to help them use the land effectively in order to grow crops and produce food. So some attempts at fishing and farming were successful for these new settlers. Other ones in certain areas of Atlantic Canada, not so much. The last thing that we know, and we've seen this throughout all of our lessons in this unit, relations between the British and the French were not good. Often they were fighting for different settlements and pieces of land. Some pieces of land that were originally owned by the British became controlled by the French, and vice versa. Towards the 1700s, we see a lot of the British taking over several huge parcels of land or settlements from the French. So to give you kind of some background information before we start this portion of the chapter, we know that when settlers came from Europe and ended up in Atlantic Canada, they depended a lot on these First Nations and Inuit groups because they had a lot of resources and a lot of knowledge about the land. And as a result of this, in order to sort of, in a way, repay the First Nations groups for this knowledge about the land and resources, they began to trade with each other. And this trading relationship that these groups developed with each other would have a big impact on all of these groups over a long period of time. And today we're going to look at relationships between the British or the French and three different groups. And the three different groups we're going to be focusing on today are the Inuit, the Innu, and Beothuk. So those are the three groups we'll look at today. There are other groups we will discuss in our next lesson, but for today we're just going to focus on those three. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to explain the assignment that you're going to do and what I'm expecting, and just showing you some of the resources you're going to use to help you with this assignment so that it's a little easier for you to get started. So I have attached a PDF document, and it's actually the chapter from the book that we're currently working on now in social studies. If you open that PDF and you click to the 18th page of it, you will find the beginning of the section that you're supposed to read. So you're going to read information from pages 18 to 23 of the document, and I'm going to show those to you now. So technically, as you can see, this is page 18 of the PDF. It's not page 18 from the book, but if you go to page 18 of the PDF, you'll end up where you're supposed to be. So you're going to read starting from page 18 all the way to page 23, and that will cover the first three groups. While you're reading this, I want you to look for information about the relationships and the types of interactions these groups had with each other. For example, the first group you look at is the Inuit. This section of the book mainly discusses their relationship with the British. And so as you're reading, I want you to see if you can find any positive effects of the relationship between the Inuit and the British, and any negative effects. And then what you're going to do is you're going to fill out the table that's attached in that Google Doc. So read through from page 18 and 23 here first. then you are going to start to fill in the chart. So, for example, the first one is about the Inuit, and the interaction example is after the British took over Labrador, Newfoundland in 1763, the missionaries are members of a religious group who promote their religion, they moved to the northern coast of Labrador. And part of the reason they did this was that they were trying to promote their religion to the Inuit group. So, as you'll notice here, you, for section, will record something about this interaction that would have been positive for the Inuit, something that would have been positive for the British, and also a negative result of this interaction on the Inuit, and a negative result of this interaction for the British. And you'll do that for all the sections you're going to read. And you'll either be looking at their relationship with the British or the French. Now, in some cases, you're going to notice as you read that there weren't necessarily always negative repercussions or positive repercussions for a certain group. So if you cannot find anything positive or negative, you will just click into the box and you will type there were no effects on this group, so that we can see where certain groups actually didn't really experience any negative or positive effects from the interaction. Done filling out the chart, I have 2 reflection questions at the bottom of the document, and I'm going to read those to you now. So at the bottom of the doc, once you've filled out those 3 charts, you're going to answer the questions below. And the first one says, which groups seem to gain the most from these interactions? Meaning, which groups seemed to gain the most positive benefits from their interactions with each other? The second question is, which groups experienced the most negative effects from these interactions? In both questions, you also have to explain why you are giving this answer. So please just don't write the name of the group. Please explain your answer using evidence from what you have read from that section of the textbook. So that's the assignment for today. It is a bit kind of lengthy. I do apologize for that, but it's important for you to understand how these relationships kind of change the course of what we saw in terms of what ended up happening to each of these groups long term. So if you have any questions, you can email me through Gmail. You can comment on the assignment. Message me in the Google Classroom if you need to. Good luck with the assignment, and please know that if there's any parts that are confusing, I am around to answer questions. I'm only an email away, so please reach out. I think that's it. Have a good one.